it's not the writing of John, but it's the challenges. Because what John does is he writes from a thematic position, and anything that is thematic, it has a theme tied with it. And so the theme that is tied with it is a man that gets healed at the pool of Bethesda. And we have to look at a couple of things that are going on in the text. The Bible says, and just for a moment, indulge me. The Bible says the pool was called, it was by the sheep gate. Now, what you must understand is the sheep gate was a place connected to the pool. It was one way in, and they brought the sheep in for a sacrifice. But what is interesting here in this particular text is the pool has 5 porches, and the 5 porches leads to the temple. Now the temple would be considered Solomon's old temple, but the temple is outside the gates of Jerusalem. And so what happens is anything that's outside of the gate is naturally consumed for the people that are considered outcasts. I don't know if you were ever considered an outcast. Have you ever been considered an outcast in your family? Have you ever been considered an outcast on your job? Have you ever been considered an outcast in your marriage and even at the church? You know, you were inside the church, but you was made to feel like you was on the outside of the church. One of my favorite poets in all of the world, his name is T.S. Eliot. And T.S. Eliot says something that is very profound. He says, if you have Jesus and he's on the outside of the church, and he really is supposed to be on the inside of the church, and then you have people on the inside of the church, but they act like they're on the outside of the church, then they're just having an experience without a meaning. Let me work that a little bit here. When we look at the text this morning, there are a few things that are going on. Number one, it says in these 5 porches, there lay a multitude of sick people. A multitude. But these porches, they lead to the temple. Now, that implies something. It says in what John, and I like John because what he does is he makes the pool of Bethesda a theater, and he gives us free admission to take a view at it. So what happens now is the fact that why is it that Jesus doesn't go into the temple, but he goes to the pool? It tells you something. Just because you have a building doesn't mean Jesus is in it. Jesus always goes where the sick people are. And so what he has is he has an approach to these people that are sitting here. But notice now, you got 3 categories of people. You got the blind there, you have the lame, and you have the paralyzed. Okay, let's deal with the blind for a moment. We know as men and as observationalists, we know what it must, or we can imagine what it must feel like to be blind, because we see blind people all the time. But that's just for the sake of an spiritual experiment. I want every man to stand up. Stand up, stand to your feet. And let's try this spiritual experiment. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to turn to your right. Close your eyes and turn to your right. Now I want each man to take 5 steps. Imagine living like that 24 hours a day. Open your eyes. You may rest yourselves. Now, that's what it feels like to be physically blind. But imagine what it feels like to be socially and emotionally blind. Let me work right there for a moment. When you're socially blind and you're emotionally blind, there have been situations that